What's up, Cane fans? Welcome back to the show. If you watch Cane's content ever on YouTube, like I do, you probably recognize the guy right next to me, Peter Ariz from Cane's Insight. Peter, how you doing, man?
Doing well, John. Thank you for having me tonight. Big fan of the content you put out, and thank you always for the support, man. It's always great to see passionate people like you who are you guys have a different view of things, right? Like it's you guys are very passionate about the program, obviously, and at the same time, like everyone has their own views on what's going on, and appreciate what you've got. I know you're always bringing the energy. I've had too much caffeine today, so I wish I could join you with the with the cafecito, but I definitely indulge in it every day, sometimes twice a day. So I'm normally right there with you.
Nice. Well, growing up in Miami, we grew up with our grandmas giving it to us like after dinner. So like we're
it's no matter what time of day, we're ready to go.
Exactly. So it's kind of perfect timing you're coming on because we just had this young man from the 2027 class commit, Demarcus DeRo. Do I have that name right?
Demarcus DeRo.
Demarcus
DeRo. Man, intriguing one. And we were just talking about it before we went live. It's always, the bat signal comes out. Everyone is excited and trying to figure out who it is. We understand that they're going to be working on some guys here for the 26 class, but I don't expect much movement until the season really starts here. But you get the 27 commit in Demarcus DeRo. An interesting story. Started his high school career at Key West. So I'm gonna get the backstory on that one. You don't hear that very often. Started his career at Key West on there. Was at Boyd Anderson last year, and is now at Cardinal Gibbons. But 6'6", listed at 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds, and has on 247 they have him listed as an edge. Miami, from what Demarcus told me tonight, is recruiting him on the offensive side of the ball. Coach Woodle, as the tight ends coach, is someone I'm hearing is a big fan of his. It's just he's so young that it's very tough to say, man, why can't he develop into a defensive player? I know, for example, Illinois, Trent Harris, the outside linebackers coach there. We all know Trent Harris, former Cane Toolbox Trent, who's one of the upcoming assistant coaches up there. He offered him as a defensive player. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I'm not going to complete this count. I think we all remember a guy named Greg Russo, who was a skinny wide receiver when Miami offered him, and Manny Diaz and those guys did obviously a great job in that evaluation. And not making that flat out comparison, but it's very hard to not look at the body type and you see the lankiness and then the body control still, right? So an exciting one for 27. It's still a couple years away from him getting on the field, so you have to always temper those expectations. But nice to get some momentum going here. Top 200 player, I think 181 on the composite. So you get top 200 players and you start stacking them early, and that's a great way to get your next class started.
Yeah, for sure. I never shy away from blue chippers. The more, the better. But yeah, you mentioned the Greg Rousseau comp, and I was like, yeah, I remember him coming in like I think sub 200 pounds, and then it's hard to predict who of those kids is just going to bulk up to 255 like that, like solid muscle. Like you can't really tell.
And you don't know, like, it's one thing to say they're going to put on weight, but how are they moving with that weight too? Because like some guys, as we've seen, unfortunately, across, we can use Anthony Chickillo, for example, right? Chickillo was a guy who got really big at Miami, ballooned at Miami because that's what they needed him to do at the time, and that's what they wanted him to do, but then ends up having a really solid NFL career, playing a few years at a much lighter weight. And you just don't know how their bodies are going to react. Now, this is, again, it's a very unique body type because he's so lanky and skinny. But at the same time, if he can put it on solidly, then again, and it's more than just the weight itself, John. To me, it's like, we're talking about offense and defense. Is he a guy who's going to be a really physical player if he's going to play the defense side of the ball? Is it going to be, even if he's a tight end, you're going to need that physicality of the blocking game. But nonetheless, man, an intriguing pickup. And Florida has offered, Auburn has offered, NC State has offered. So this is still an early evaluation. I believe Miami offered back in May as one of his first offers. As I see the comment here from Blue saying, is he not another Cyrus Moss? Look, Cyrus Moss obviously was a big recruit coming over from Nevada. The physicality just never really materialized with him, I would say. I don't remember Cyrus Moss playing both sides of the ball. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be completely wrong on that, but I like that part of it. I like the ball skills here. I mean, this kid looks like a football player. If you pull up you guys watch the huddle, like the second play of his tape, he's covering someone in the slot, flips his hips, goes up and makes a one-handed deflection. You see the body control. I see a good football player, see some ball skills, but again, it's so early. I mean, the body type, yeah, you could say it's similar to Cyrus Moss, but we were excited about Cyrus Moss at one point, so I don't want to, we're looking at them as prospects at this point.
Yeah, and listen, I was excited about Cyrus Miles. I think we all were. That guy was almost a 5-star recruit, and It was a Mario flip on signing day. So, again, like we said, it's really hard to predict what they can do. But anyway, yeah, always great to add a blue chipper to any class. But, that news happened like an hour or two ago. So it's fresh. So we have to talk about it. But I did want to talk about, obviously, a little bit of camp stuff. We're coming out of fall camp. Now we're going into Notre Dame prep, which I'm assuming, maybe Mario won't give an exact answer to the press on this, but I'm sure they're starting their prep now this week.
Yeah, started today from and Mario talked about it a bit on Joe Rose this morning too. Okay. So not to cut you off, but
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, they're getting into it. Obviously camp is wrapped. So very, as always, going to be a physical portion of camp. Obviously, the injury stuff we sometimes don't always flatly say, as there's a lot of questions about certain guys, obviously. But I will say that overall, it's about as healthy as you could hope. People are very, optimistic about that side of it. People that have, there's a lot of question about certain players that I think you'll start hearing their names more this next week or so. I'll put it that way. So, I think that nothing catastrophic in terms of the injuries. It's there's not any teams. We look a little up north. We see Florida. They're dealing with some stuff as well. Notre Dame has had a couple guys already go down with season-ending stuff, unfortunately. But Alex Bauman's brother, really unfortunate, because that would have been a really cool moment for the family. I think he had a knee injury. So in terms of that stuff, man, coming out of camp, it's good. I think Notre Dame prep. We found out today, of course, CJ Carr getting named QB. I'm still expecting some Minchie in that one. I'm not sure what you think about that, but I just reading the reports, I think his legs are going to give them a little bit more than what Carr can do.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to ask your opinion on that, because one of the stories that broke today was CJ Carr being announced as the starter, which I'm not going to lie, surprised me a bit, because it's for like the last week, the feeling out of South Bend was that they were leaning Minchie, which makes sense for their offense. He's more mobile, but I agree with what you just said. We're going to see both, I think, in that game.
Yeah, and Carr, look, he's a younger player, and they may want to kind of build around him for the future. So this is, as we've seen before, Notre Dame losing at Northern Illinois, they still rebounded, in an early season game. So I think Marcus Freeman also probably making a decision that he thinks is best for the program long term, not just saying who's going to give us a better chance in the Miami game, right? Yeah. So I think us CANES fans were looking at it like, how does it affect Miami? But I think Notre Dame is also looking at it like, all right, it's a decision for the season, right? We can't be quick with it necessarily, but yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Everyone's talking about the no experience. Me personally, I didn't think Angeli was that bad, who ended up winning the job at Syracuse. Mm-hmm. He played for them, led them to a scoring drive against Penn State in the playoff game that they won, that got them to the championship. So they're they took a chance on what they had on the roster and CJ Carr and Minchie and let him walk. But yeah, you got to think that Corey Heatherman and those guys are going to be pretty excited to get after it.
For sure. Blue asking, is it surprising the game hasn't been sold out yet? I'm not that surprised. Miami fans need to step up and get behind this team. I don't know how much like 2017 the atmosphere is going to be, but I would imagine home opener coming off a 10-win season. I've been following this team a long time, and I know when the hype is a little different going into a season. When we start the season with a big game like this, I would be shocked if the paid attendance is south of 63,000. Like, if it's not close to a sellout, like, it should be a sellout. I don't know.
I agree with that. And I'll say, just as like, for some reason people hit me up thinking I have like ticket connects and stuff, like which isn't the case. But like, I get the sense just people are reaching out to me like, hey, what do you think the tickets are going to go for and stuff? I think people are really trying to figure out, because it is, let's be realistic, a more expensive ticket than your normal, not only opener, but this is the Sunday night atmosphere, the Notre Dame. It's going to be taxed a little bit more, right? So I think people are also trying to figure out like what's the best way to go about getting the best the best value for the ticket as well. So I think there's a little bit of that involved. I think everyone in the building that night wearing the orange and green is going to be pretty rowdy, man. I agree. It's hard to predict. Hey, it's going to be as ruckus as the greatest atmosphere I think we can all say we've seen in that stadium as Canes fans. Like, we can't just say, hey, it's going to be like that, but you'd have to think it's going to be up there in terms of the atmospheres. And you gotta think that anyone who's in the building that night is going to try to bring some of that energy into the building that night.
Yeah, absolutely agree. No, it should be a raucous crowd. And the great thing is, since we're so focused on the Notre Dame game, we're not really talking about it. A few weeks right after, you got the Gators coming to town. So you got two like really like juiced up home games in the first few weeks that are going to be like loud, like at least 60,000 for both. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, I think it could be a tone setter in terms of, if not only for the season, but just like nationally. And I know we're going to get into some recruiting stuff and like how these games affect the recruiting. But you can put an end to a lot of the what we know is the negative that's thrown out about Miami in the recruiting game is, yes, if it's not a Notre Dame or a Florida, sometimes the attendance is not going to be what we would all like for it to be, because of the nature of, Miami being the city of Miami and South Florida being South Florida, right? But I think you can kind of put a lot of that stuff to rest, because you say, yeah, you know what? Maybe for a random NC State game, there's 45,000 in there, but you're going to get the craziest atmosphere in the country, or one of the craziest, which people might laugh when we say that, but again, we remember what it was that night, and we know what it can be. And that place gets loud when it's rocking. So again, I might be creating some clippable stuff here, which would be, of course, great for the Cafecito and Kane show. But
please clip away.
but yeah, man, I think that's what we all gotta hope for, some good atmospheres early.
Yeah. No, we'll go into the recruiting aspect of this game in a second, but I wanted to get to Demetrius's question here. What's up, John and guests? You doing all right? How are the Canes O-line and D-line looking in practice? So I feel like we can get up. I think he's asked me this question a couple times, but it was more like, when they were in shells and stuff. But now we have a good sample size, things we've heard. They've been in full pads. They've done some scrimmages. Everything I'm hearing is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our O-line is in the best shape it's been possibly in the last 2 decades. And as far as size and health and NFL prospects, I think we're going to bully some teams on the ground this year. Hopefully that happens next Sunday. We'll see. But yeah, I think O-line is in great shape, and the D-line's got some talent on paper, look really good. And they're going up against that O-line every single day, which the great teams in the past iron would sharpen iron Monday through Friday. It was the hardest. They would always say Monday through Friday was the hardest. Saturday was easy. These are the matchups that you want in practice. So what have you heard?
Yeah, I think, you look at just looking at the couple scrimmages they've had, you could say that the defense probably won that day. I think Mario said as much after the first scrimmage, and the defensive line in particular, had really good reports coming out of the scrimmage there. And then I think coming back, the offense had a really good scrimmage here over the weekend on Sunday. So there's been some good back and forth. And I said this on the Canes Insight Show today because someone asked a similar question, like, how do we know that this isn't, these O-line, D-line battles that everyone's talking about that are so great? How do you know it's not both sides aren't very good, and it's not that they are both very good? And we know what the O-line is. We've seen what the O-line is the last couple years, and I think going to be, as you said a second ago, as like the best it's been. With an improved Markel Bell, with a CC in year 3, with a Nez Cooper, dropping a little bit of weight and, focus and trying to improve his draft stock, with whoever's going to be starting out there at guard, whether it's McCoy, Sampson, Rodriguez, you have Brockermeyer as a very experienced center. So when you know what they are already, because you're returning so much, and then you're seeing the D-line win some of those battles in practice, I think you could say, all right, like that's a very good sign for you. You also, defensive line wise, looking at that real quick, you're assuming Ruben Bain bounces back from the injury and he's slimmed down and he's looking more explosive. So like you're assuming that, but you're also banking on all those guys not only Ruben Bain getting back to form, but all those guys taking the next step, because it's not like years past where you brought in some transfers. You didn't bring in a Tyler Barron who, had his ups and downs, but he was expected to be, when you brought him in, like a big time transfer defensive lineman. So you really didn't bring anyone in there. So you're saying, all right, JT, Damian Lewis, we need you to coach those guys up. And obviously I think there's a lot of excitement about the Armando Blunts, Mesidor. People forget he's led this team in sacks 2 out of the last 3 years, and one of those years he was hurt. Blunt, we think he's going to take the next step. I think my one concern would be in terms of the interior defensive line. You like the top 3 guys in Moten, Scott, and Blay, who I think Blay is going to end up being probably the most productive guy from that group. But behind that, you have some young guys. You have a Dante Simpson who looks good, but you don't have a 315, 320 pound lineman. And like, I think, like you said, you're going to be able to run through a lot of teams offensively. And I think you have the bodies that some of these ACC teams should not be able to keep up with. You should not be able to really run the ball consistently on you, should not be able to keep you from pressuring the quarterback. Should not. Right, we saw it should not have necessarily happened last year, but the body types across the board are different. But when you talk about getting into these games against Notre Dame, where they're going to want to get physical up front and run the football, and you get deep into that game, are they going to wear you down? Do you have the bodies there? I think early on you do, but I'm looking at this could be a 16, 17 game season. I think we as fans forget that sometimes, man. We're like, we're in the mindset of, hey, it's the old days. You got 13, maybe 14 games. If this team does what we all hope they can do, because people talk about, and not to go on a tangent here, but like, people ask, why'd they bring Tony Johnson in at wide receiver? And it's like, man, they could be playing 17 games this year. God forbid one of the a Malachi that we are so excited about, God forbid he goes down and you have Ray there that we hope he takes the next step, but we're not relying on it, right? Where you have some real depth now across the board. And I use that as an example, but just going back to D tackle, that would be my one thing that you get to the playoff games, you get to talk about Notre Dame, Florida. I have my questions about them, but their body types are gonna look how you want them to look in terms of the size up front. And then the Clemson, you get to the playoffs. So there's going to be certain games that I say, all right, you're going up against someone who has similar physicals as you. do you have the depth to withstand, kind of the whole onslaught that they're going to throw at you?
Right. No, and that's something I think about too, the 15, 16 games, that if we hit our goals, that's how many games we're going to play. So it's almost like an NFL season now.
Dude, you see how many guys, unfortunately, in the NFL are getting hurt late in the season, and like you got some guys back. You got Damari Brown back late in the season last year. That's how long these seasons are. But think about it. You would have played, you would have had a couple more weeks of football last year after when the bowl game was really. Yeah. If you keep going, and the team was already so beat up at that point, so it just makes you think, and it's just a new era where you need that across the board to compete.
For sure. Okay, so now the recruiting stuff, which I really wanted to get into with you. So Juan's asking if you think recruits care more about NIL than crowd showing up. I think this is a good topic because this is something I've wondered lately. Like, I've gotten into arguments and discussions with other people and in our Discord and stuff, like why we're losing South Florida recruits and all that stuff. I think it's multiple reasons. I think you and D Money on your show, I think you guys hit it on the head. The biggest reason, there's multiple. Biggest reason is, hey, we haven't been relevant in 20 years. And remember, these kids are 16, 17 years old. You look at the last 5 years. 5 years ago, they were 11 years old. So 5 years to them is like their whole life. The last 5 years, Texas has been relevant. Ohio State's been relevant. Bama, Georgia, those are the big name programs that they're looking at. They're not looking at Miami. Miami just now is, like, in their eyes, becoming relevant with last season with Cam and the 10-win season and all that. But this is one that I think people don't talk about enough. Do you think, I mean, you have your finger on the pulse, with these kids and stuff, like, how much do you think they care about, hey, 75, 80% of these games, you look and it's like 20, 30,000 people in the crowd. How much do you think they care about that?
Look, John, I think everything matters. Everything matters. We try to figure out, why did Derek Cooper go? Why is Calvin Russell going to Syracuse? Like, and we can all say, man, he's getting paid. Yes, he's of course Texas is going to pay him a lot of money, right? Shout out to Flo. Like, let's not be. But do we think that Miami's not paying Jackson Cantwell to come? A lot of money. It was to come play here, right? And obviously there's always outrage with how it's portrayed in the media, which we can say that's something that gets us upset as fans, right? I'm not defending that, but I'm just saying everything matters. So yeah. The crowd is a factor. Like, that's part of it. Is it the most important thing? I don't think it is. I think that you got to be relevant, number one, right? And we don't like to hear that, as you kind of just went into it. And dude, it stunned me when I was looking at it, because people on our show, when we were talking about the Derek Cooper thing, not to rehash painful memories now, right? But people were saying, hey, but Texas hasn't won anything either. And I looked back on it and I said, Texas in the last 20 years has 9 10-win seasons. Miami has 2 10-win seasons in the last 20. Like, yeah, Texas hasn't won a national championship, but they've been kind of in that discussion more. And so that matters. NIL, of course, matters. But again, with all this stuff, when it comes to me, if Miami wants a guy, their offer is going to be competitive enough. Does that mean that it's always going to be the highest offer? No, but is Miami the highest offer on kids sometimes? Yes. I'm just being real with it. It's all part of it. And by the way, has there been situations that Miami has the most money in the situation doesn't get the kid? Yes. This thing all evens out. The crowd, yeah, it's good. It's going to be a factor, but to me, it all goes hand in hand. If you're winning, if you're winning 10, 11 games a year, John, do you think the fans are showing up? I think they are. And then this whole thing kind of becomes a moot issue. And is it going to be a sellout every week? Probably not. But I think this can be a consistently, and we know what they announce, but I think this can consistently be a 55 to 60,000 really good crowd. And I think that's a realistic expectation for a program that we expect to be in the playoff hunt every year, for a program to be, in the ACC championship every year, even though we, unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. But that's where my head's at with it, man, is that it matters. But if you're winning, you get more people in the stand. It's a very interconnected circle there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think winning will affect all the other things, and I think winning cures all. But yeah, you're right. I remember the Orange Bowl days. I started going to games in 2000. Okay. That through 2007, I've had season tickets since 2008, that first year at Hard Rock, and ever since. I remember in the OB, that 2001 season, a lot of people bring it up, that Temple game that like 30,000 people came. Mm-hmm. One thing people don't bring up is there was a hurricane right off the coast. That was one big reason people didn't go to that game. But yeah, like you get 37, 40, 38 to games like that. But then Syracuse would come to town, Big East title on the line. Now you got 58, 62,000, 65,000. Washington the next week on a night game, Thanksgiving weekend, sold out. So like the fans are paying attention enough that they know when the important games are. Yeah. But I think it could get to the point where, like you said, where it won't be a sellout every week. That won't happen because there's just too much to do in Miami. There's too much to compete with. But can you get it to the point where that 20,000 that was showing up for Middle Tennessee State, instead, if we're rocking and rolling, 45 show up, 42 show up? That's a lot better. That's a lot louder. In fact, I don't know if you remember this game. It was that year that TVD, he was a freshman and he got red hot against NC State. Mm-hmm. It was that night game. It was probably like 35, 38,000 in the stands, but for whatever reason, it was like extra loud that night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just get like not even 40,000, but like I think it could make at least that much of a difference.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I think that's what it comes down to. You've got to be consistent enough though, where like that's the bar, that's the floor, I should say, because the floor has been too low for too long in terms of where the wins have been consistently, which again affects the attendance. You have a great schedule this year too, so I think you can build a lot of momentum with the fan base who are exposed to these games against Notre Dame, Florida. Hopefully they have great times out there. Hopefully you win, and then they say, I don't care that you have some of these other teams that aren't the most appealing on paper. I'm going to come out here and support because I had such a great time at these other games. And that's how you build this. That's how you build the foundation for the fan base where it needs to be. And it's a very polarizing fan base, as we understand, but that's what makes us special, right?
Yeah, we're a little different. But obviously there's big time, big name recruits visiting for the Notre Dame game, mm-hmm. which is great. I think it's great for them to be there and see that crowd because, as Chris M was saying, like a lot of them may not even remember the 2017 season. To us, that was the other day. To them, they were like in sixth grade. They may not even.
They were 9-10 years old.
Fourth grade. They were probably not even watching football.
So, and it's scary to think about it like that because that seems like that was like yesterday.
I had 8 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's a tremendous point. It really is. So you think about how far away that's far away, the 01 and all that is. Luckily we have the documentaries, and a lot of the guys still, those play so much that mm-hmm. that these guys are still aware of it. And a lot of their parents are, kind of school them on it and all that. But I think, when you talk about the recruits that are going to be there, obviously we already have heard Derek Cooper is going to be there. I know Nick Lanier, there's a possibility as, 27 class receiver. He might be there. I've heard there's 70, 75 plus names already confirmed. So, and this is not only this class, the coming classes, but I never want to say that one game is going to win over a recruit, John. Like it's hard to say that, hey, you beat Notre Dame, even though Derek Cooper says, hey, it'll get me excited if Miami beats Notre Dame. He says that's what's going to get me excited. But you're not gonna get the kid to commit that day, but you keep the momentum going. You win that game, and I'm not saying you lose the game. It's not like it's over with, but recruiting is a momentum game, man. How many times do we see, man, one commit, two commit in the span of a week or two, and they start kind of piling up on top of each other? There's real momentum, and then all of a sudden, like you had the unfortunately late summer here where you kind of had some losses there with Russell, and then it seems like, man, we have no momentum right now. We can't get anyone, and then all of a sudden you'll see a Samorian Wingo pop, and you're like, all right, maybe we can. This is all momentum. So you win that game. The hype is big. The buzz is big. You have momentum. Last year, I can't say that losing to Syracuse was the reason you didn't close on some kids or didn't flip some kids, but the momentum was killed. As fans, it was killed for us. If we as fans, John, are sitting there like as distraught and beat up as we were about how the season ended, how do you think the recruits who are choosing things here based on their livelihood coming up, these are huge decisions for them, and if the momentum is killed there, yes, you're trying to still get them to come aboard, but it's going to be tough to close some of those battles. So I say all that to say, you beat Notre Dame, that door is wide open, I think, for some of these kids. You got the Derek Coopers. I think Jay Lamar is another one at running back who let's see if you can get back in the mix there. As Jorge Blanco says here, it's going to take the body of work. I agree. Like, it's not just one game. It's not just, hey, you win that game and then maybe you lose Florida. Maybe you lose to Notre Dame and then you go on a run and beat Florida and you don't lose a game the rest of the season. Then it's like people kind of forget about the Notre Dame game. So it's very tough to look at it in a vacuum, like in a one-game situation. But if you can keep that momentum rolling, you keep yourself in the mix for a lot of these high-profile players that you want to be in the game for. And then, a Calvin Russell, for example, just to bring him up and trying to get more into detail about some of these guys. Strong commit to Syracuse right now. We'll see if he ends up coming to a Notre Dame game and how involved Miami stays in that recruitment. But who knows what Syracuse season looks like? Maybe they kind of fall off from what we saw last year with the run they had, winning 10 games, and then maybe you have the momentum flips for Miami and you win big the way you think you can win, and you stay recruiting him, and that's how some of these flips occur. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, Chris M says it here too. Georgia Tech pulled the Band-Aid. Syracuse ripped it off. So it's like, yeah, man, that momentum it kind of stopped in the middle of the season, and then you picked it back up, but you still were limping along the way there, and that's what it all comes down to.
It was just such a crushing loss. I think the fact that we blew a 3-touchdown lead just added pour salt on the wound, because if we started slow out of the gate and it was just like a shootout from the beginning and they just caught us at the end with a field goal or a 2-minute drive, all right, they just outplayed us. But it's like you felt like you just choked completely.
Yeah. And again, the word deflating is what I use. So it's like it kind of just it halted everything, man. If you would have had imagine you have some hype going into a playoff game, your logo's everywhere, you're all over ESPN, they're all talking about, how does Miami match up against this team? How does, you're talking about Cam Ward, who's in the orange and green for a whole nother week, and Miami's in the spotlight. And, even like you weren't able to land like an Eric Singleton, a receiver in the portal, who I think would have been like a slam dunk hit from Georgia Tech. But like, even if he didn't come to Miami because you didn't have a quarterback at the time, you didn't know that it was going to be Carson Beck. But like, I just wonder if you're still playing football, if you're into the playoff there and you're playing into late December when a guy like him is making a decision, like, does that affect it? Even if you don't know who directly your quarterback's going to be, you might just be like, man, like there's no way we don't I say we, but if you're the kid Singleton, like it's like they're going to get a QB. They're deep in this mix right now. Someone's going to want to come play for them. So shout out to Muhammad Hussein. He always brings the same message on Canes Insight. So
yep,
he says pack the rock all season. So
yeah, love Mo.
He's a strong supporter of that.
Yeah. No, he does a great job supporting all the Canes content. I don't know how he has the time to watch us all and catch the lives, but I appreciate Mo for that. I just wanted to ask you this question really quick, and then we'll hit like one or two fan questions and get you out of here. I don't want to be on too long. I wanted to ask, so we're already kind of on the subject, the deflating loss against Syracuse kind of tanked our season. So now we're heading into year 4. All Mario guys, the roster's set, depth is set, no excuses, blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of how I feel. Roster-wise, there's no excuses anymore. What do you think could still hold this team back from a playoff appearance or getting to Charlotte again? Do you think it's something that still maybe they haven't fixed yet, or still something you need to see, like, to prove you wrong? Like, what could still hold us back, you think?
I don't think it's necessarily proving me wrong or proving me anything. I think it's the fact. I think it's the factor of the unproven nature of a Corey Heatherman. And I'll preface it by saying I am, a big fan of everything I'm hearing. I think he's the man for the job. But until you see a guy he's running the defense, calling the plays in, he's done it he did it at Minnesota last year. But some of these games that he's going to be calling these plays in, right? And I'm not saying game 1, we should be good, right, in terms of personnel. But I'll kind of say it's a 2-part example, right? Because I talked about the depth at D tackle, for example, earlier, right? When Lance Guidry was here a couple of years ago, we had some really bad D tackle concerns, and we kind of had to flip his whole scheme in the middle of the year. We were playing like a 3-3-5. It was like a really weird. You remember that? So like he had to adjust on the fly, and honestly, the first year wasn't that bad. Like it was last year that we all kind of freaked out, deservedly so. But the depth is better across the board. But if you do have an injury or two, how is a defensive coordinator who has not been in the position he's in now at a University of Miami in a high stakes situation, how will he react? How is he going to be able to adapt? Right? Until a guy's put in that situation, I don't know how it's going to play out. And again, I'm a fan of his. From everything I'm hearing, I'm a believer that it's going to work out. But I'll say the unproven nature of that, right? Just because he hasn't done it at this level. And then realistically, the unproven nature of the receiver room, albeit I have been outspoken that I'm really confident in that group. But how many times have we seen Green Tree All-Americans, unfortunately? Right? I think that Coach Heatherman himself said the other day, even though we're talking about the receivers, but Heatherman said something interesting where he said, look, man, there's some guys who every day they approach it pretty much like a game day. But then he said there's some guys who, when the scrimmage days came, you could tell that they were acting a little bit different. They weren't as loose. They tightened up a little bit, and it was a little, more mistakes came into play. So you naturally have to think, for as good as you feel about the depth of the receiver room, that's going to happen with a few guys. Not every guy is going to be a dude for you. So the unproven nature of both sides of both things there would be what I would say could prevent you from doing it. Now, I love the receiver room. I think that you go back to before last season, John, and Restrepo was Restrepo, but unfortunately, we remember some Canes fans who were saying, hey, he should hit the portal. He was only getting these touches because TBD was his buddy, which was obviously crazy talk. But let's just talk about what the perception of the room was then. You had that. Isaiah Horton, all we were holding on to was one flash play against Texas A&M the prior year, but we hadn't seen it consistently from him, right? We had no idea. We were talking about it as fans saying, hey, you could take the next step, but what was really the national perception of him? No one really knew. Jacoby George, talented player, had his extracurricular stuff that made us scratch our heads and throw our remotes at times. But it's not like he didn't get drafted, so it's not like we're talking about a guy who was a a world beater, right? So to me, the unproven nature of the receiver room is something we're looking at there, but it's not like last year's room was the craziest in terms of talent either.
No, it wasn't. And I would say the national perception of the receiver room now is better than it was heading into last season in general. And look, I keep telling people teams have done more with less. It's like you don't need first rounders all over the field to win the freaking ACC. Like, just get it done already.
Yeah, and I like CJ Daniels. People forget, I mean, the downfield threat he was a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just really wasn't healthy at LSU last year. Mario has been, and look, Mario is very guarded in his words with the media. He doesn't go out of his way, as we know, listening to him enough to really give people a lot of praise. He doesn't like to hype people up, but CJ Daniels, he's huge on him. Malachi, we've talked so much about him. You know, we all expect him to be a gamer from day one. Josh Moore as a freshman, talk about a high upside talent that, that's an athlete that is just different in that room. You haven't had an athlete in that room in a bit. Juan Manuel asking why I'm a soccer fan. Man, I've worked in football, American football for so long, man. Essentially, I've been covering the teams since I was like 15, 16 years old. I've worked in it as an agent that sometimes it feels like work sometimes, even though we love the Canes. So I think soccer is kind of my outlet outside of American football in a sense. It's a different world for me. It's the international feel to it. But no, man, I'm a big soccer guy. I am. And man, I love how it's at all times of the day, John. It's I don't know if you're a soccer guy, but there's matches on all the time, so it keeps me entertained in the background.
Literally all over the world. So I wouldn't call myself a soccer guy. I would call myself a casual watcher. There's nothing else on, I'll catch a game, catch an English Premier game here and there. He's asking, why am I such a hockey fan? Well, funny story, because I saw this pop up and I was thinking, when did that start? I grew up in the era where the Mighty Ducks movies were coming out, and I love the Mighty Ducks movies. Now they're so, like, I go back, they're so like insanely unrealistic movies. Right. I think like Gordon Bombay, the coach in the first game, like if you actually look at the numbers, it's like, wait, they're implying that he scored 17 goals a game in Little League. That doesn't make sense. But like they're Disney movies, I love them. And also I played a lot of the hockey video games like Wayne Gretzky 3D hockey on the N64. That's a way throwback. So yeah, I've always liked it as a kid. Then the Panthers had their run in 96. Yeah. And like that kind of got me hooked as a kid. And I went to games with my dad in the Miami Arena. It was awesome. And like I've just been kind of with the Canes. I've been just kind of sitting there waiting for them to be good again. Finally, 17, 18 years later, whatever it was, they started making the playoffs again. I was like, nice. There's actually fans in the stands again. So yeah.
And Juan Manuel asking, our Canes fanatic story. I mean, I grew up. My dad went to Miami. I went to Miami myself. Graduated 2016, and I grew up, like you said. Your first season was 2000. My first season was the 01 season. So like I was 7, 8 years old, but the first loss I saw as a Canes fan was the Ohio State game. So I saw 2 full seasons. I was like a young kid, but I vividly remember this, going to every game as a season ticket holder with my dad. But like that was the first loss, and I thought it was legitimately impossible. I didn't think Miami could lose. I hadn't seen it happen. So that was a traumatic experience in my childhood there, and I think it obviously sticks with us all to this day. But no, man, I again, John, thank you, so much. We'll, take a couple more questions here from the fans if there's anything else. But appreciate you for having me on today, man.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I'll probably hit 1 or 2 more really quick here, but yeah, no, I've said it many times on this channel. They're probably sick of me saying it, but my first game, I wasn't even a football guy. I was in 8th grade. My dad took me and my sister to Wide Right 3 in 2000. Dorsey to Shockey, like that game. And
good start.
Yeah, you can't get a better start than that. I mean, sold out. Literally, we get to the Orange Bowl. My dad's looking like they ran out of fluids. Like he grabbed a Diet Coke and a lime green Gatorade, which I hate that flavor. That's all they had left, literally, in the concessions. And I was like, all right, we're going to live off this for the next 4 hours. And got all sunburned. And yeah, that was my intro to football, period. And fell in love with college football ever since. And yeah, it's kind of been a lot of traumatic experiences from like 03 on. I didn't go to, do you remember the 10-6 loss to Tennessee in 03?
Yeah. Sean Taylor, I think, unfortunately had that muff punt at the end. Yeah.
Yep. So I had to watch that one on TV because for whatever reason we couldn't go. The first time, so I started going to games in 2000. The first time I saw them lose in person was 04, the overtime game against Clemson that Brock Berlin missed landslide in the end zone. So 4 years I didn't see them lose. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll hopefully be back to it soon, man. Hopefully be back to it soon.
I got a good feeling. Let's see if I missed any questions. Wayne Gretzky. I was thinking about that game the other day. Let's see. Is that it? No more questions? Oh, I think there was one about special teams. Let's hit that one really. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's yeah. Are you good with our special teams coaching this year? So I'll hand this one over to Pete because I know very little about this current special teams coach. I know Notre Dame has awesome special teams. They led the nation in block kicks. I think they were second in block punts. Crazy. So,
yeah. So it's funny because people haven't people ask this question a lot, and his title of special teams coordinator, Danny Coulter, has been there on staff since the Golden staff. So he's been there. I went to school with him. He's my age. So he graduated like 2016, 2017, but was like a very highly respected grad assistant at the time working with the special teams. Believe it or not, he was part of the team that kind of, as we know, it's very hard to design a play the way it turned out against Duke with that crazy return that they won. But he was on the special team staff at that time, right, dating back to all the way then. So he's been with the program a while. Special teams is you have to have someone who wants to coach special teams. A lot of times coaches, like, they start with special teams but are trying to coach another position. He's someone who actually, from my understanding, this is what he wants to do. He's devoted. This is the sort of coach he wants to be. He's specialized in it for as long as he has. Now, the Borregales brothers are the Borregales brothers. It's very tough to give a coach the credit for their success, but he's been around with those guys, so he knows what it's supposed to look like. From what I'm hearing now, Carter Davis, I think, probably is going to end up winning that kicking job. Bert Auburn also came in from Texas, but Davis, big leg from FAU. And look, when it comes to choosing the kicker and when there's a battle, it comes down to really the numbers. Like, they're going to get the same amount of kicks in practice, same yardage, because you got to test it. It's like a science, it's like when you have to do these science experiments when you're in school, you have the control, right? They're always going to get pretty much the same looks at it in terms of yards and hash and all that. And you got to see who's made more. And that's really what it comes down to. So again, I don't think it's fully decided yet, but I would lean towards Davis there. But going back to the thing, I think when it comes to the coaching, I think we're looking at the tackling on special teams. You can't have some of the stuff that you saw in years past. Last year, which Louisville game, right? That was a game where there was a big return that kind of flips momentum, but and then you want to get more explosive in the return game as well. So it's both sides to it, but I think he's got the pieces to do it now. He's got the Keelan Marions, the Keontae Scott in the punt return game, and you got some young guys ready to roll and get physical on special teams. So I'm excited for it. And again, he's a guy who's been here, so he's for some reason he's been asked about a lot the last couple of years, but I think it's just because now he's in more of his face is out there a little bit more. But the kicking game's been great. Now no Borregales will we'll be really having it under the microscope, though, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, and I see us going for it on 4th and short a lot anyways. So
Yeah.
maybe we won't need to kick that much. All right. I don't want to have you on too much longer. So I really appreciate you taking the time, hopping on with me, talking some Canes. As I told you, love your guys' show. You guys helped me get through these last couple months of the off season, as I'm sure was the case with a lot of fans. You start to need that hit right around June, July. It's like, all right, I want the season to start.
Listen, there's some dog days in there for sure where, there's people can tell, I'm sure, the days when we have a title like top 5 most intriguing players for the team, but we still gotta have the discussion, man. So thank you, John, once again, and love the work you're doing here. And again, love your perspective, and thank you guys, everyone in the comments who watched tonight, and thanks for your support on all my other platforms. So appreciate you guys.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you, Pete. And as always, go Canes.
Go Canes.
Have a great night, everybody.